What if the internet wasn't built on locations, but on meaning? Today, we are diving into a really radical idea that could rebuild our digital world from the ground up. It's called Tetragrammatron, an architecture of meaning. Let's break down exactly what that is, and more importantly, why it might just be a game changer.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the core concept, then look at how it completely flips current systems upside down with 3 major inversions. After that, we'll walk through the 5-layer blueprint, see how it achieves identity without consensus, which is huge, then check out how it connects to the tools we already use, and finally, we'll zoom out to see the ultimate vision here, a new kind of internet.
So, let's get right to the heart of it. The entire Tetragrammatron system, everything we're about to talk about, is built on the answer to this one single question. What if meaning itself was the source of all digital identity?
And here it is. This is the fundamental loop that powers the whole thing. It goes like this. Meaning creates an identity. That identity creates an address. And any computation you do with it, it all circles back to meaning. This isn't just some catchy slogan. It's literally the engine of the entire architecture.
Okay, but what does that actually look like? I mean, think about it. Right now, your identity is probably tied to some secret key you could lose, or maybe an entry in a company's database, right? Well, in this world, your identity is derived from the what of something. Its essential structure, its content. It's a total reversal of how we think about digital identity. So, to really get this shift, we need to look at 3 core ideas that Tetragrammatron just completely flips on their head. It basically takes the conventional playbook for building distributed systems and tosses it right out the window. Let's just compare the 2 models side by side. Conventionally, you generate a key to get an identity, but here you just normalize an entity's meaning to derive its identity. Conventionally, you have to register a service somewhere to get an address. Here, the address is derived straight from the identity. And finally, instead of finding a service at some address, you address the meaning itself, and the computation just finds you. So what's the payoff for all these inversions? Well, you get to eliminate entire categories of problems that plague our current systems. All of a sudden, you don't need things like DNS. You don't need certificate authorities. You don't need name registries. The whole problem of how to even get an identity or an address in the first place, it just kind of vanishes. Okay, so how do you actually build a system like this? Let's take a look at the blueprint. This is the 5-layer architecture that brings this whole idea to life. And each layer has a really strict principle. Down at the bottom, you've got the substrate. It just stores content. It doesn't care about meaning. Moving up, the protocol layer is where meaning creates identity through a process of normalization. Then there's the core. That's the engine that runs the system's shared math, its calculus, without adding any of its own interpretations. The network layer is where identity creates an address, which lets you route things based on meaning. And right at the top, the hub is the user-facing part, where you can observe the system's truth without ever being able to change it.
Now, central to this whole system is something called the semantic identity, or SID. And this is so important. A SID is not assigned to you by some authority. It is mathematically derived from the canonical normalized structure of an entity. The same meaning will always produce the same SID, everywhere, for everyone. It's deterministic. This whole idea of a deterministic SID leads us to what might be the system's most profound breakthrough: achieving universal agreement on what something is without needing a blockchain, a central server, or any kind of consensus protocol. It's wild. So how does that work? Well, the magic is in the math. There's a formal property of the system's calculus called the commuting square, and it guarantees that it doesn't matter what path you take to normalize a piece of data, you will always end up at the exact same canonical result. This means any 2 nodes looking at the same thing will derive the exact same identity for it completely on their own. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Convergence is a mathematical property, not a consensus protocol. Identity isn't something we all have to vote on or agree on by sharing some big ledger. It's just ambient. It exists as a natural result of everyone just doing the same math. This completely sidesteps the need for things like blockchains to establish who or what something is. Okay, so this is a really powerful new model, but for it to actually be useful, it can't just live in a bubble, right? It has to connect to all the tools and platforms we already use every day.
And that's where adapters come in. You can think of them as deterministic translators. They take one single canonical semantic identity, a SID, and they can project it into a valid format for another ecosystem. So the very same SID can be used to derive a stable IPv6 address, an Ethereum address, a W3C DID, a Git handle, or even an IPFS content ID. But these adapters have to follow three really strict laws. First, the process is always deterministic. Second, they're isolated. You can't feed an adapter credential back into the core system and mess with it. And third, they have no authority over the original SID. They're basically safe one-way bridges to the outside world.
All right, let's zoom all the way out and look at the grand vision that this entire architecture makes possible, a truly semantic internet.
What happens here is that concepts we usually think of as separate start to collapse into one another. When an address is just math derived from an identity which is derived from meaning, well then discovery collapses into derivation. The question, where is this service, suddenly has the exact same answer as what is this service? You don't have to look for things anymore. You just calculate where they have to be. And that brings us right back where we started, but hopefully now with a much deeper understanding of what it means. We have this perfect, self-contained loop where the entire digital fabric is literally woven from meaning itself. So this leaves us with a final, pretty provocative question. What new kinds of applications, new systems, maybe even new kinds of societies could we build if our entire digital world was founded not on some arbitrary location, but on verifiable, deterministic meaning? It's something to think about.